The air inside Miller's garage was thick with heat and the faint, bitter scent of old oil. Ethan Miller tightened the last bolt with a firm, deliberate twist. His hands moved with quiet confidence. No wasted motion, no second guessing. That was how Ethan worked. Silent, focused, and invisible to the world. He didn't need attention. He just needed engines to make sense. And they always did, until today. A luxury black SUV rolled into the bay, its deep engine hum cutting through the static on the shop's old radio. Charlotte Whitmore stepped out, her heels clicking softly against the concrete floor. She wore a white silk blouse and matching pants, not a wrinkle in sight. She didn't look like someone who got her hands dirty, and yet, something in her expression said she wasn't a stranger to life's mess. Her eyes were sharp but tired, as if this visit to a rundown garage was the end of a long, humiliating search. "I've taken it to 4 shops," she said flatly, not bothering to hide the frustration. "None of them could figure it out. They told me to junk it." Ethan didn't speak right away. He wiped his hands on a rag and studied the SUV with quiet intensity. There was something unusual about the way the engine idled. Too smooth, too controlled, almost like it was hiding something. He glanced at her again. "It's not the engine," he said. "It's something else." Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "You haven't even touched it yet." "I don't have to." That shut her up. She watched as Ethan leaned in, hand brushing along the frame, ears tuned to every tiny vibration. It wasn't arrogance, it was instinct. For Ethan, machines spoke. They whispered their secrets. And right now, this one was screaming. He popped the hood, and within seconds, his face changed. Not shock. Recognition. He didn't say what he saw. Not yet. But something in the way his jaw tensed made her heart skip. It wasn't just a car problem anymore. Something inside that engine bay had triggered a memory he thought was long buried, one connected not to machines, but to people. To a night. To someone like her. And just like that, the job became personal. Charlotte crossed her arms and leaned against the workbench, watching Ethan with a cautious curiosity. There was something unsettling about how calm he was, like he wasn't fixing a problem but decoding a secret. She didn't want to admit it, but for the first time in weeks, she felt hopeful. Maybe not about the car, but about finally getting a real answer. One she hadn't known she needed. Ethan slid the diagnostic tablet onto the table without even glancing at it. He didn't trust machines to tell him what he could already feel in his bones. Reaching into the engine, he traced the wiring harness with his fingers, his brow furrowing as he uncovered something odd, a small modified module tucked behind the firewall. It shouldn't be there. And whoever put it there didn't want it found. He pulled it out slowly and held it in the light. It was aftermarket, custom-built, and definitely illegal. Charlotte's eyes widened as she saw it. "What is that?" "Looks like a remote override," Ethan said, his voice low. "Military-grade tech. Someone wanted full control of this car without being inside it." Her face went pale. "That car belonged to my father. It's been in the family for years. Are you saying someone was tracking him?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed the device gently on the counter, as if it could still bite. "I'm saying whoever installed this knew exactly what they were doing. And they didn't want him to know about it." He looked at her then, really looked. "Do you know anyone who would have wanted to keep tabs on your dad?" Charlotte hesitated. The truth was, her father had lived a life far more complicated than she ever understood. He built his empire with charm and secrets, lots of secrets. After his sudden death, Charlotte inherited everything, except the answers she needed. Maybe that was what brought her here, more than the broken car. Maybe part of her already knew the problem ran deeper than oil and wires. Ethan could see it in her face, that flicker of doubt, fear, and the beginning of something dangerous. Curiosity. For the first time, Charlotte wasn't looking at him like a mechanic. She was looking at him like a key to a locked door she wasn't ready to open. The silence in the garage stretched thin as Ethan examined the strange device under a magnifying light. Its circuits were unlike anything he had seen outside of his brief time working near military contractors, before everything in his life went sideways. He didn't want to remember that part of himself, but this little black box had dragged it all back. Some things didn't rust with time, they just waited for the right spark. Charlotte stood a few feet away, arms wrapped tightly around her midsection. Her confident posture had cracked. She no longer looked like a woman in control. She looked like a daughter trying to understand a father she never truly knew. "My dad was private," she said quietly. "Always locked doors, locked drawers. He worked late nights, took calls outside. But I thought it was just business." Ethan finally looked up. "You ever check the onboard history? GPS logs, data backups?" Charlotte shook her head. "No. I didn't think I needed to." He nodded and walked over to the driver's side, slipping into the seat with ease. His fingers danced across the screen like he'd done it 1,000 times. Moments later, the diagnostics popped up, but most of the data was encrypted. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide the routes this car had taken. Whatever the SUV had seen, it wasn't meant to be remembered. Then Ethan noticed something, a hidden folder. It wasn't just encrypted, it was buried behind a fake firmware wall. He cracked it open, line by line, until coordinates began to appear. A pattern, a loop. One place repeated every Thursday for over a year. "Lakewood Cabin," Ethan said out loud, reading the location. "Does that mean anything to you?" Charlotte's eyes widened. She stepped back like the name had slapped her. "That was my dad's retreat. He used to go there to get away, said he needed peace and quiet to think." Ethan leaned back in the seat, letting the engine idle beneath him. Then maybe peace wasn't what he was really looking for. Charlotte's voice was just above a whisper. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away, but the look on his face told her everything. Whatever her father had been involved in, it didn't end with him. And now, the trail was leading straight to her. The hum of the SUV's engine faded as Ethan turned the key and stepped out. Charlotte hadn't moved. She was still staring at the screen, at the name she hadn't heard in over a year, Lakewood Cabin. For a moment, she didn't even seem to breathe. The place wasn't just a cabin, it was where her father had gone the weekend before his heart attack. The weekend everything changed. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. If he kept going back there, maybe there's something he left behind. Something whoever installed that device didn't want you to find. He didn't need to say it outright, but the meaning hung heavy in the air. They weren't dealing with a car problem anymore. They were chasing ghosts. Charlotte nodded slowly, her voice low. "I haven't been there since the funeral. I just couldn't." The place felt too quiet without him, like it was holding something back. Ethan watched her closely. She looked different now. Not weaker, just stripped of the armor she wore when she first walked into his garage. It was the first time he saw her not as a wealthy client, but as a daughter desperate for answers. The silence between them grew warmer, like shared pain building an invisible bridge. Then, almost as if reading his mind, Charlotte said, "Would you come with me?" "To the cabin." Ethan hesitated. His life was simple for a reason. He avoided complications, avoided other people's messes. But something in Charlotte's eyes, something broken, something buried, mirrored his own. And deep down, he knew, this wasn't just her story anymore. It was his now too. The road to Lakewood was long and twisted, lined with pines that seemed older than memory. The deeper they drove into the woods, the heavier the silence became. Charlotte sat with her hands clenched in her lap, watching the trees blur past the window. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was racing. Every mile closer to that cabin felt like peeling back a layer of something raw and unfinished inside him. When they finally pulled into the gravel path, the cabin appeared like a shadow waiting for them. It looked untouched, no broken windows, no signs of life. But something about it felt wrong, like it had been waiting too. Charlotte stepped out first, the crunch of her shoes on gravel the only sound. She didn't speak as she unlocked the front door. The key still worked. Inside, the air was stale, frozen in time. Dust covered the furniture, but everything was exactly where her father had left it. Whiskey glass on the table, books stacked near the fireplace, a jacket hanging on the back of a chair. It was like he might walk back in at any second. Charlotte's throat tightened. This was more than a cabin. This was the last place he had ever truly existed. Ethan moved quietly, scanning the space like an investigator. His instincts kicked in. He wasn't looking for memories. He was looking for clues. And he found one. Near the study, behind a loose panel in the wall, he uncovered a small locked box. Old, heavy, cold to the touch. He turned to Charlotte, lifting it without a word. She stared at it like it was radioactive. I've never seen that before. I didn't even know that wall opened. Ethan's fingers trembled slightly as he forced the rusted lock open. Inside were old letters, photographs, and one strange item, a small flash drive wrapped in a worn piece of cloth. Charlotte picked it up slowly, eyes scanning the initials on the cloth. W.H. Her breath caught in her chest. My father's partner, she whispered. William Hargrove. They had a falling out years ago. He just disappeared. Ethan met her gaze. I don't think he disappeared. I think your father made sure no one ever found him. Charlotte's heart pounded as she looked back at the flash drive. Whatever was on it had been hidden for a reason, and now it was in their hands. Back at the garage, Ethan plugged the flash drive into an old laptop, one that wasn't connected to the internet, just in case. Charlotte stood behind him, arms folded tight, as if bracing for a storm. The screen flickered to life, and after a moment of silence, a folder appeared. One single folder named Whitmore _records. Her father's last name. Her name. Inside the folder were dozens of documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, scanned letters, and video files. Ethan opened the first video. Grainy footage showed two men in a dark office. One was clearly Charlotte's father. The other, William Hargrove. Younger, angrier. Their voices were tense. You promised this would stay clean, Richard, William said on the screen. We were supposed to build something honest. I did what I had to, Charlotte's father replied. This land deal funds 3 other projects. You knew the stakes. The video ended abruptly. Charlotte swallowed hard. What land deal? Ethan opened another file. Blueprints, maps, bank transfers. Slowly, the pieces came together. Her father and William had purchased large portions of land around Lakewood under shell corporations. But instead of preserving it like they claimed, they sold the rights to a defense contractor, one known for secret testing. Toxic waste had leaked into nearby towns. Children got sick. Lawsuits vanished. Everything had been buried. Charlotte staggered back, pressing a hand to her mouth. He knew. He knew what he was doing. Ethan looked up, and William tried to stop him. That's why he vanished. A long silence fell between them. For Charlotte, this wasn't just about her father anymore. It was about legacy, about the lie she'd been raised to protect. She had always believed in his integrity, in the good he claimed to do. But this was blood on paper. She turned to Ethan, her voice shaking. If this gets out, my family's name is done. Everything I've ever known. Ethan stood slowly. Then you have to decide, protect the name or protect the truth. Charlotte looked down at the flash drive still glowing on the desk. The same hands that once held champagne and charity checks now trembled over evidence of betrayal. For the first time, she didn't know who she was without the story she'd always believed. And outside, across the dark street, someone sat in a parked car, watching. Ethan noticed the reflection first. A faint glint in the glass of the garage window, a car parked across the street, its engine off but presence unmistakable. Someone was watching them. He didn't say anything at first, just stepped away from the desk and casually closed the laptop. Charlotte caught the change in his body language immediately. "What is it?" she asked, already tense. "Don't look now," he said, voice low, "but we've got company. Gray sedan. Been sitting there since I turned on the laptop." Charlotte's stomach dropped. "Do you think it's connected?" Ethan gave a short nod. Nobody watches this garage unless they're looking for something or someone. They moved quickly. Ethan grabbed the flash drive and slipped it into a small metal case he kept locked in his toolbox. Charlotte pulled down the blinds, heart racing. Her family name had always been a shield. Now it felt like a target painted on her back. She looked at Ethan. "What do? We stay calm. We don't let whoever that is know we're scared," he replied. But the truth was, Ethan was scared. Not for himself. For her. This had gone far beyond engines and secrets. Now it was about survival. He'd seen this kind of quiet threat before, back when he did repair work for companies that didn't want their problems documented. That night, Ethan insisted Charlotte stay at the garage apartment above his shop. It was small, barely furnished, but safer than her downtown condo. She hesitated, pride clashing with common sense. But something in his eyes, steady, unwavering, made her nod. Hours later, long after the lights were out, she lay awake on the old cot, staring at the ceiling. Every creak in the floorboards below made her heart pound. She thought of her father, of the secrets he died with, of William Hargrove, of the children in those towns who had no idea what had poisoned their land. And just before she drifted off to sleep, she heard it, a soft knock on the back door downstairs. 1, 2, 3, slow, measured, like someone who wasn't in a rush, because they already knew exactly where she was. The knock came again. 3 slow taps, spaced evenly. Deliberate. Like a message. Charlotte sat upright on the cot, heart pounding so hard it drowned out every other sound. She didn't move for a full minute, barely breathing. Was she imagining it? Another knock. This time louder. No imagination. No doubt. Downstairs, Ethan had already grabbed the old revolver he kept hidden beneath the floorboard in the kitchen. He hadn't fired it in years, but the weight in his hand reminded him why he'd never gotten rid of it. Some ghosts didn't rest easy. He stepped softly to the back door, not turning on the light. He peered through the side window, but the porch was empty. He opened the door a crack, carefully. The night was still. No wind. No sound. Just the sharp scent of pine and gasoline. Then he saw it, a white envelope tucked under a cinder block, perfectly centered on the welcome mat. No name. No address. He picked it up, heart tightening. Inside the envelope was a single Polaroid photo. It showed Charlotte, standing next to her car from earlier that day, taken from a distance, through a scope. Written on the back in sharp black ink. Stop digging. Some things are meant to stay buried. Ethan locked the door and double-checked the windows before going upstairs. He found Charlotte standing near the edge of the stairwell, barefoot, pale, but steady. She didn't need to ask. She saw it in his face. They'd been warned. She took the photo from him with trembling fingers. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Then finally, almost in a whisper, "They're watching me. I thought I was just chasing a ghost." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. You were. But now the ghost is chasing back. The air between them shifted. Whatever line had once existed, between mechanic and client, between safe and unsafe, between truth and silence, it was gone now. Charlotte wasn't just a woman searching for answers. She was a threat to powerful people. And Ethan, he had just made himself a target by standing beside her. And miles away, in a dark room filled with screens, someone watched them in silence, waiting for them to make the next move. Ethan stood by the window, watching the street like a soldier waiting for the first shot. Charlotte sat at the desk, the flash drive beside her, the warning photo still in her hand. She hadn't said a word in over 10 minutes. Her silence wasn't fear, it was calculation. She was used to contracts, lawyers, boardrooms. But none of that prepared her for this kind of decision. This wasn't business. This was survival. I can get the contents of the drive to a reporter I trust, Ethan said finally. Old contact from my days on the base. He's the kind of guy who doesn't run from heat. Charlotte didn't look up. And what happens to us? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. She already knew. If they released the information, the people behind that surveillance wouldn't let it slide. Her family's name would be destroyed. Ethan's quiet life would vanish. And whoever had been sitting in that car wouldn't stop at threats next time. Charlotte rose slowly, picked up the flash drive, and stared at it like it was alive. My father made choices he thought no one would ever uncover. Maybe he believed they were necessary. Maybe he was scared too. Her voice cracked. But those kids, those towns, they didn't get a choice. Ethan nodded. But we do. That sentence lingered like smoke in the room. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw someone who'd already lost too much to silence. Someone who knew what it meant to carry guilt you didn't earn. And for the first time since this began, Charlotte knew exactly what she had to do. Not out of vengeance. Not even justice. Out of something stronger, responsibility. Then we go public, she said, her voice firm now. We leak it all. The documents. The video. The names. No redactions. No hesitation. Ethan gave a small, steady nod. I'll make the call. But just as he reached for the phone, the garage lights flickered. Once, twice, then died. Total darkness. A second later, a low hum filled the room, like a generator powering up or a signal being intercepted. Charlotte's breath caught. They're here, aren't they? And in the silence that followed, a voice crackled through the baby monitor Ethan kept in the garage below, one neither of them recognized. You should have stayed quiet. The monitor went silent, but the chill it left behind clung to the room like fog. Charlotte's pulse throbbed in her ears. Ethan moved fast, pulling her away from the windows and toward the stairs. Upstairs, he whispered. Roof access. If we can get to the alley, we have a chance. They climbed in silence, every creak of wood a possible signal to whoever was outside. When they reached the hatch to the roof, Ethan pushed it open slowly, scanning the empty street below. No visible movement, but that meant nothing. Whoever was behind this had planned it well. They weren't going to walk in guns blazing. They were going to disappear them quietly. Once on the roof, Charlotte turned to Ethan, clutching the flash drive. We can't run forever, she said, breathless. Even if we escape tonight, they'll find us. We don't need forever, he replied. We just need 30 minutes. He handed her his phone, already connected to a secure channel, and gave her the name of the journalist. Tell him everything. Send the files. Do it from here. I'll buy you time. Her eyes widened. Ethan, no. But he was already halfway down the stairs, moving fast, heart steady. He knew what he was doing. He'd spent his whole life avoiding the fight, but not tonight. Tonight, he was done hiding. He triggered the alarm system he'd installed years ago but never used, flooding the garage with sirens and light. A clear message: "You want her, you'll have to come through me first." Above, Charlotte sent the files, each upload ticking toward a truth too big to be buried again. She watched the progress bar crawl forward, whispering names she'd once spoken with pride, now tarnished by silence and greed. The files were sent. The story was out. No going back. 10 minutes later, flashing lights filled the streets. Police. Reporters. Unmarked sedans peeling away. The alarm had drawn too much attention for a quiet cleanup. Whoever had come for them had backed off, for now. By dawn, Ethan and Charlotte stood side by side on the sidewalk, exhaustion etched into their faces. A camera crew approached. Microphones were raised. But Charlotte spoke first. "My name is Charlotte Whitmore," she said calmly. "And I have something the world needs to hear." And as her voice carried across the morning air, Ethan stood beside her. Not as a mechanic, not as a protector, but as the man who helped her find the truth and finally stop running.